Had a chance to stop down and talk with us as we were out at EPR over the weekend to talk about the state of the harness racing industry. How much longer can it continue to survive now that the provincial government has pulled away its grant money? TVMB's Dan Noel had a chance to talk to Ingham Palmer, a man that is a very familiar face out at the harness racing, around the harness racing circles in the Maritimes and especially at EPR. Here's what Ingham had to say.
Now I'm the owner with driver John.
Where will these cuts to funding leave harness racing?
Three-entry G.
What's the effect on harness racing?
Well,
it's difficult to tell. It's not good. It's not bright. It's devastating. But just how long we can survive without them remains to be seen. I think Mr. Dares will probably keep things going as long as he can, but it won't be as it has been in the past. It's a definite hurt to harness racing and to the sport and the industry that it is.
Where do you think, what areas of harness racing do you think are going to be most affected by this?
Already, I think probably the ownership base, which is down, and you've got to go back about 10, 20 years. I've been around a long time, and I've seen the glory days, the days when we used to bet $10 million here in the run of a year. And from that $10 million, the track would retain roughly $2.5 million. That gave them money to fix fences, build barns, and rebuild the racetrack and so on, and build this clubhouse. Last year, I think on live racing, we bet probably just a little bit more than $1 million. So the track's retention on that, which most of it went to Atlantic Lano, was only $250,000. That doesn't leave very much to improve facilities. So you've got to improve facilities. You've got to expand your horse base. Now, our facilities are deteriorating, and our horse population is dwindling. You've got to get down to racing probably twice a week in order to attract new owners. And the horse population, the decline just in 1 year, our Atlantic Sire Stakes program and the Dairy Queen Pepsi Futurities. Last year, I think the number of 2-year-olds that were entered in the Dairy Queen Pepsi, something like 330, 350 2-year-olds. This year we're down 100, down to 230. And of course that means that the brood mares are down as well.
So if you take a case like this with the cuts to funding, what part does that play into anybody new getting interested in
Well, that word funding bothers me because it's not really funding. Because, people think that the government, Mr. Lord or Mr. Betts, are coming along with their checkbook and writing out a check, taking it from the taxpayers. That is not so. It's money that we've lost to their gaming interests. Go back to the days when we formed the lottery. It was stipulated, and it probably still is written, and probably written in stone, that the monies generated from the sale of lottery tickets would go to sport, amateur sport, and the arts. Okay? Where does it go? The government takes it, doesn't give anything to sport or the arts, or if they do, very little. They're putting it into general funding. They're taking money. And of course, our wagering decline results from the lotteries and the VLTs. So the government is taking from us, and they refuse. They do some funny things. We all know Lord moves in mysterious ways. An old phrase, but his wonders to perform. Now, here we are in New Brunswick. We don't dig potatoes anymore. I guess we have to fish for potatoes.
You mentioned that some effects are already been seen. What effects do you see happening, say, where is this going to be a year from now, harness racing?
Oh, gee, I don't know. It won't be as big as last year. I can see that. Our Atlantic Sire Stakes, with the question mark is hanging out. Nobody seems to know. But here's a man sitting behind me, Mr. Wayne Hill from Fredericton, that went to the fowl sales last year and paid $25,000 for a colt that was bred out in Hampton. And he did that with the assumption that he was going to be able to get his money back or lucrative purses through the Atlantic Sire Stakes. With Nova Scotia in and Prince Edward Island in and New Brunswick out, I don't know if the Atlantic Sire Stakes will be coming to New Brunswick. Nobody seems to know that right now. If Mr. Hill will have to raise his horse in Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, he won't get any purses here.
What's the alternative? What's left?
Well, the alternative is for the government to... I don't think that people in the government the cabinet ministers. I don't think there's anyone in New Brunswick that knows very much about harness racing, really. In all fairness to them, I don't think they do. They need probably a crash course, or somebody to explain things to them, the benefits of the industry as a sport, employing something like, well, over here in the backstretch and in the grandstand here, we probably have 300 full part-time jobs. That's just one racetrack. Then you tack on Fredericton and Woodstock, and then you take the breeding establishments scattered all around the province. The number of people employed in New Brunswick at harness racing, probably close to 1,000. There are 1,600 members of the United States Trotting Association in the Maritimes. 1,600 members. And of course, everybody that is involved isn't a member. And on top of all these people, you've got your racing fans. So a lot of people are involved, and we're not looking for funding from the government. We're looking for some of our money back, some of the dollars generated from gaming that have been taken away from harness racing to be put back in.
You mentioned the video lottery terminals. You mentioned the lottery itself. Does it bother you that harness racing is a sport and yet it's logged in with that same category?
Yes, it does, because I've grown up with harness racing as a sport long before the VLTs came along. But we're living in a changing universe, and I guess it started at Dover Downs in Delaware, where they brought the slots into the racetrack. And now it's expanding into Ontario, and it's just amazing what it's done there. A beautiful racetrack, probably the nicest racetrack in North America, Woodbine, has gone into, it's sort of a combined casino and racetrack operation. It hosts harness racing and thoroughbred racing, but it has 1,700 slot machines. And the money that it's generating in purses is fantastic, and the revenue that the municipalities are in Ontario, the money that they're getting from the slot machines,
race number one now, 3 minutes
just tremendous.
Field
So
78 is out.
it's become a necessary evil, I think.
7 starters here, race number one.
And maybe we'll see them here.
Coming up,
They're out of the corner stores here. Maybe down on the bottom level we'll have a bank of slot machines. That might be the salvation to it, and the money generated there would come to help us, as it does in Ontario and Quebec.
Great. The future of harness racing in New Brunswick.
Well, in one way it has grown tremendously. Speed. It's fantastic. The breeders, the trainers, the owners, the drivers have done a tremendous job. Racing's never been faster. Even today, it's fast, and it's exciting, and it's good racing. And the racing here in St. John or in the Maritimes is just as good as it is in Ontario. You can see them racing in Ontario and Quebec this afternoon, and it's no more exciting. Might be a little quicker in Ontario, richer horses and so on, but no more exciting. So the future of it, well, it's hard to say. I hate to see it decline. These Atlantic Sire Stakes have been in the go since about the mid-'60s. Started out, the total purse for them at that time was about $10,000 for all the Maritimes. Now you're going one race for $10,000.
Down to 2 minutes, race number one now, down to 2 minutes.
And we need more people back in. To get more people back in, you need bigger purses. You need to go at least probably here, twice a week. And there's a long way to go, and it's been hurt tremendously.
You mentioned your belief that the government has a lack of knowledge when it comes to harness racing. Could you possibly see in the future, in light of what's been happening recently, somebody spearheading a organization or a group put something together to take to the government?
Well, there are no groups. Each province has formed of late, within the last 4 or 5 months, a body. I don't know what they call them yet, but they've got a cross-section of people, breeders, drivers, owners, businessmen, and so on, from each province. And then from those 3 groups, there's one group that comes together, and supposedly one group speaking for all people. It's a step in the right direction. So they have got a job to do. Mr. Betts, this is what harness racing is all about. Mr. Lord, this is what harness racing is all about. There are new people, I've never heard tell of Mr. Betts until the last year or so. Mr. Lord, never heard tell of him until a year and a half, 2 years ago. And they have to learn. Of course, they've got a lot of things to learn about the province. Fishing for potatoes, for one thing.